let me pull you through this activity, and then I'll try and get you back again. For profitability ratio, so it's going to be the income statement right over here. For profitability ratios, do you want a high ratio indicating greater profitability or a low ratio? High. The higher the ratio, the more profitable. And that's going to be considered favorable. And you want an increasing trend is considered to be a good thing. So now, let's go back here and figure out wait a second. Circle the strongest among the three companies for each ratio. Let's talk about Apple first. Return on sales. Which company has the best return on sales? Apple. Which company has the best asset turnover? Dell. Which one has the best return on assets? Apple. And which one has the best gross profit margin? Why do you think Apple is so much better than the other two? Yeah, because the Apple products are more differentiated. That people generally think of Dell and Hewlett-Packard products as interchangeable, and there's a lot of other competitors out there. But if you want a Mac, you can only buy it from Apple. No other computers company has a product like the Mac. And it's the same thing with the iPod. If you want an iPod, where do you have to buy it? If you want an iPhone, who do you have to buy it from? Now, you could argue that each one has competitors, and they certainly do. If you want a laptop, you don't necessarily have to buy an Apple one. But if you want to buy a Mac, then you have to buy an Apple. So they've differentiated their products, and that allows them to charge a lot more money. And are Apple products more expensive than the competitors? Absolutely. Why? How about Dell's asset turnover? What's going on with that? How could Dell and Hewlett-Packard beat Apple at turnover?
Because they sell more.
They do?
They squeeze more out of their assets.
They squeeze more out of their assets. Is anyone here familiar with how Dell operates? Dell revolutionized the idea of, really revolutionized asset turnover and what's called logistics and supply chain management. What Dell decided was they have a completely different business. They had, when they created it, a completely different business model than all other companies. And that business model was to make their products to order. Mass-produced products made to order. It's an unbelievable idea. The idea was this: Dell wanted to touch and keep inventory for as little time as possible. So the way Dell works is that if you order a laptop from Dell, they immediately assemble it and ship it to you the same day. In the Dell warehouse, Dell does not like to keep inventory in the warehouse. So the raw materials, the parts it needs for its computer, as it collects orders during the day, it ships the orders to its suppliers, it emails it electronically, the orders to suppliers, and the suppliers are expected to deliver the parts the same day. The suppliers usually have trucks in the parking lot. So every once in a while, they'll pull a truck up to the loading bay and say, okay, here's what you need now. Dell immediately puts the products together, ships them out to the customers as quickly as possible. Dell also revolutionized something else, the idea that you could sell things that you don't own. So if you order a monitor from Dell, it might be made by another company. You buy it from Dell, Dell sends the order over to the other company, and the other company ships you the monitor. So Dell doesn't even have to own the monitor before it sells it to you. The idea is to own as little assets as possible. And it's a brilliant strategy, and it really served Dell very well. The idea, if you want to use your assets efficiently, right, what could be more efficient than simply refusing to own assets until they're ready to be sold? And if you do enough volume, if you sell enough computers, then your suppliers will give you the respect and they will work with you on it. Hewlett-Packard has sort of mimicked Dell, but not successfully. So Dell has done tremendously well in this regard. Now think about how Apple is handicapped in this respect. Apple makes all of its own goods. Well, it doesn't make its own, but it needs to order the goods from China. The goods need to be shipped to the United States and then prepared for sale. And this process can take 3 to 4 months. At Dell, even those types of items, the process is sped up in such a way that Dell will not have to own the merchandise any longer than it has to own it. And therefore its assets are minimized. And it makes Dell's business a very unusual. So Dell revolutionized the idea years ago of making your computer to order. But other computer companies have since mimicked Dell, and now it's not as unique as it used to be. So Dell has that high turnover, low price strategy. You can see it here. Hewlett-Packard also has a higher turnover, low price strategy, but it hasn't executed it as well as Dell. And you can see that in the return on assets. But Apple's turnover is actually not so great. But the real reason why Apple's turnover isn't great is not because of the products. Apple has a very interesting problem. I try and go online for you. You know what? No, I try and go online for you, but then I'd get locked out. Apple has so much money it doesn't know what to do with it. Isn't that nice? Wouldn't that be nice? To just have so much money that you wouldn't know what to do with it? Here, I'm going to see if I can find the information here. 1 second. I don't know if I can get it on here or not. Finance.google.com. Okay, wait. I'm going to look up. This is amazing. You're not going to believe this. Whatever, it's downloading. Meanwhile, I'll come back to that in a minute. Which company has the greatest markup on products sold? Is Apple. And which ratio reveals this information? Gross profit ratio. Okay, wait a minute here. Oops. Which company appears to sell at a low markup to generate a greater volume of sales? Dell has the lowest markup. So how do you know Dell has the lowest markup? Yeah, they have a very low return on sales and also a very low gross profit margin. Which of them, according to the most profitable measure of profitability, which is what, according to Karen Schoenbeck? Return on assets. So which one has the best return on assets? Apple. Which company has the lowest product cost compared to sales revenue? Do you want to know how much cash Apple has as of... This is unbelievable. You don't want to know how much cash Apple has right now? This is April 3rd. Excuse me, March 29th, 2014. Apple had $18.9 billion in cash. And it had short-term investments, which are like cash, of $22.4 billion. So real cash and short-term investments, which is just money lying around with nothing to do, is $41.35 billion. And that's out of $200 billion worth of assets. It also has long-term investments of $109 billion. Again, that's money that's just sitting around, nothing to do. So you can say that 150 billion out of $200 billion in assets of Apple are cash and investments. Just stock investments. $150 billion out of $206 billion worth of assets. So wait, let me ask you a question, right? If you were Apple and you had $150 billion in cash, what would you do with it? You ever see that movie? What's it called? Brewster's Millions? What was that movie with Eddie Murphy? You ever see that movie? I think Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd were in it. Come on, it's a funny movie. I forgot somebody's Millions. You don't know? Brewster's Billions or something like that. The idea is that, or maybe I'm thinking of a different movie. He has $1 million, and in order to get a big inheritance, he has to spend it as soon as he has this like 24 hours to spend all the money, and he runs out of things to spend money on. If you had $150 billion, what would you do with it? What? If you're Apple and you have $150 billion, what do you do with $150 billion? Apple is buying Beats. You know how much they're paying? $3 billion. Okay, that's 2% of their cash and investment portfolio. Just for a frame of reference, comparisons. No, really, what would you do with $150 billion?
Research development.
It has to be something that's going to help make money for your company. Nothing. Because look, it's still sitting there, and every quarter it grows. Now, last quarter, it was only, there was $40 billion in cash, and 100, oh, there's actually more. They spent some of it, I think, in a big dividend. They paid out a big dividend. That's really all you could do. What if Apple said, I think we'll buy Microsoft this year? What would happen? The government wouldn't let them. They would say that's a monopolistic, anti-competitive something, right? So you can't buy another big company. They can't buy Dell or Hewlett-Packard. So they're just stuck. But that hurts your asset turnover, right? Now think about it. They have $150 billion in assets. Nothing to do with it. It just sits there. Right? That's going to hurt your asset turnover. Because 3/4 of your assets are not producing. That's why Apple's turnover is so low. All right, which company has the lowest product cost compared to sales revenue? That's going to be Apple. And that's revealed by the gross profit percentage. Is that right? It's the opposite of it. Because their gross profit is high, that means that their cost is low. Which company has the strongest profitability? And what do you say?
Return on sales is the highest.
Highest return on sales? Yeah, what else?
Gross profit margin.
Highest gross profit margin. Highest return on assets. Which company has the weakest profitability? Is it Dell or Hewlett Packard? It depends. You could say it's Dell because Dell has the lowest return on sales and it has lower gross profit margin. Or you could say it's Hewlett Packard because Hewlett Packard has lower return on assets.
And asset turnover.
But asset turnover doesn't measure profitability. What does asset turnover measure? Productivity or efficiency. So we wouldn't say, you could say that low asset turnover is one of Hewlett Packard's problems, but that affects profitability. But asset turnover itself isn't a measure of profitability.
So wouldn't that be Dell then?
So you could say it's either Dell or Hewlett Packard. You could say that it's Dell because they have the lower return on sales and lower gross profit margin, or you could say that it's Hewlett Packard because they have lower return on assets.